Good day everyone, I'm Ethan, moderator for this webinar. Welcome everyone for today's webinar, QuickBooks Action Analysis. I'd now like to introduce our presenter for today, David H. Ringstrom. David H. Ringstrom CPA is an author and nationally recognized instructor who teaches scores of webinars each year. David's mantra is either you work Excel or it works here. I would now like to hand over the floor to the speaker. Over to you, David.
Thank you, Ethan. Hello, everyone. I'm David Ringstrom, a CPA in Atlanta. Welcome to QuickBooks Excel Analysis. Over the course of our time together today, my goal is to share with you ways that you can work with data that you've extracted both from QuickBooks Desktop and QuickBooks Online. The arc of our trajectory today is to basically see how we can unlock data from QuickBooks and then work with it various ways in Excel. First thing I want to show you is that you don't always have to leave QuickBooks in order to get the report that you want. Sometimes you can simply customize an existing report to create a particular look that you want. So for instance, maybe you want to have a report that shows you who your top customers are. We can accomplish that in QuickBooks Desktop by going to the Reports menu. Step 2, we're going to go to Sales. Step 3, we're going to choose Sales by Customer Summary. Now step 5 is where the customizations start coming in. There is a sort by field, and normally QuickBooks reports are sorted alphabetically by customer, vendor, employee, account, whatever, what have you. A nice little tweak that we can add is step 7. We can click the checkbox for % of column and then click OK. You can then optionally memorize that report. So in QuickBooks Desktop, saving reports as template is known as memorizing the reports. Step 12 there, we have our name for top customers. Step 13, we click OK. Step 14 there, we have our finished report. We can create one-click access to reports. Now with QuickBooks Online, you can create favorite reports, and so that gives you easier access to those reports. And so in QuickBooks Desktop, we can create an icon or a menu pick for our custom reports. To do that, we would bring our report up on the screen, and then we would go to View, and step 2, we would choose to add the report to the screen. That will then allow me to run the report with one click. Go over to QuickBooks Online and see how we can create a 12-month report, a 12-month profit and loss report in QuickBooks Online. Once we're in QuickBooks Desktop, we're going to go to the Reports menu. We're going to find Profit and Loss. We'll click Customize. So we're going to run a report for this year. We'll specify the number of months. We're going to say we want the columns to be in months. Simplify things by clearing out the headers and footers. That's extra stuff that shows up at the top and bottom of the report. We then click Run Report. Once you have run the report, you can then optionally save the customization. So if you are using QuickBooks Online, then you can export reports directly to Google Sheets. Otherwise, you can choose to either export to Excel or export to a PDF file. And so to automate it, what we do is instead of clicking on the file name, we instead click the arrow there, which will display a menu from which we can then choose always show files of this type. Choose Export to Excel. Your QuickBooks reports will then open directly in Excel, so that QuickBooks Online then becomes an extension of Excel becomes an extension of QuickBooks Online. The good news about QuickBooks Online is that your reports are being run from a web server. And so it doesn't matter how big the report is, it probably won't take any more time to run, it just runs automatically. So let's say that I wanted to create a 12-month report for QuickBooks Desktop. If I went to the Reports menu, I could choose Company and Financial, I could choose Profit and Loss Standard. I can set it to this fiscal year. Can then also tell it that I want a column for every month as opposed to for a single year. Downside of the CSV files is they won't launch automatically. So you do have to open them by hand. The way that we do that is we go to the File menu, we go to Open, we click Browse. In the Open dialog box, we need to change the filter to be text files because normally it's set to Excel files. You won't be able to see your CSV files if in step 4 it says Excel files. So you're going to change to the text files. You're going to choose the text file, and then you'll click open. Keep in mind, next time you go to open a different Excel file, you'll then need to change the filter back to Excel files, because otherwise you won't be able to see your Excel files. And so this antique functionality that they were embedding into the reports that you exported, that would then trigger this prompt that made you have to stop and question, okay, am I going to lose something? Am I going to affect my report if I click yes here? I mean, so what do I do? Fortunately, this prompt should not show up anymore if you're using a current version of QuickBooks. So this does bring us to that setting, though, that we can run into with the QuickBooks Online exports, which is that protected view prompt. And actually, in this case, it doesn't matter if you click protected view or not. So the protected view prompt does not have to be on the screen. But what you can do is go to the File menu, which is step 1. Step 2, you're going to go to Options. Step 3, we're going to go to Trust Center. And then step 4, over to the right, we're going to go to Trust Center Settings. That's going to bring up a second. So in the first dialog box, the first dialog box is the Excel Options dialog box. The second dialog box is the Trust Center dialog box itself. So step 5 there, you'll choose Protected View. Step 6, you're going to clear the top and bottom checkboxes. So the one that says Enable Protected View for files originating from the internet. Also, optionally, the one that says Enable Protected View for Outlook attachments. You do want to keep the middle one enabled. So that brings us to a way to use sumif with what's known as wildcard criteria. So wildcards in Excel are used with lookup functions where we want to do a partial match. The wildcard is represented by an asterisk that is enclosed in double quotes. And then we connect it by using an ampersand to whatever it is that to our lookup criteria. The other thing that sumif does is it adds up multiple matches there. So now let's look at doing some other work with more detailed reports. So in this case, I'm going to go to the Reports menu. I'm going to choose Custom Reports. I'm going to pick Transaction Detail. And then in both versions, I can pick and choose which columns to include. We'll go to the Filters tab. I can filter for the transaction types that I want. I can then export that to Excel. Now, a couple of one-time changes that I can make to my QuickBooks desktop exports is if I click the Advanced button, if I turn off space between columns, that will prevent QuickBooks from inserting a blank column in between each column of data. If you want to flip the sign on that so that the income amounts are positive and the expenses are negative, an easy way to do that is to type -1 in a worksheet cell and then copy that to the clipboard. You can then click on cell D2, and a keyboard shortcut for selecting an entire column there is to hold down the Control key and the Shift key together while you then tap the down arrow. We can then pull down the Paste drop-down list, go to Paste Special, and then double-click on Multiply. So in dialog boxes, such as the Paste Special dialog box, if you double-click on your option, then you don't have to click the OK button. So now what I want to do is I want to remove the sales tax rows and the blank rows. And so if I click the filter button in the item column, and if you don't see the filter buttons there, you can click the filter command on the data menu. Once we click the filter button, I can then type in the word tax. That's going to show me every item that has the word tax anywhere in it. I can then click OK. I can select and delete all the visible rows except for row 1, and then I can go back to the filter button and clear the filter. So once I clear the filter, the next thing I can now do is I can choose to summarize this report with a pivot table. So the pivot table feature, so we're going to select any cell within our list. Step 2, we're going to go to the Insert menu. Step 3, we're going to choose Pivot Table. That brings up a Create Pivot Table dialog box. So step 4, we're going to click OK. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Item, and then I'll click on Name, and then I'll click on Amount. I'll then take Date, and I'll drag it into the Columns section. I can then click the filter button that's in the Row Labels field, choose Value Filters, choose Top 10, and then click OK. Well, that brings us to the end of my prepared comments for today, so I'm going to turn the floor back over to Ethan.
Thanks, David. That was a wonderful webinar, and this is really detailed information about the pivot table.
Well, I do want to thank everyone for attending. I hope that you found the presentation helpful. With that, I'll thank you for attending and look forward to seeing you back soon for another presentation. Until then, here is Ethan to wrap things up.
Thanks, David. That was it. And we are concluding the session with this. And thank you everyone for participating. You may all have a great day ahead. Have a nice day. Take care. Bye-bye.